Hello, good evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our final installment of Being a Good Boss. Um, Before we begin, everybody should go down to the bottom of their screen and click on the globe that says interpretation and choose your language between English and Spanish. I'll give everyone a moment to do that because there will be questions in Spanish, almost certainly. All right. So I think what we're going to do, because we just had a session on Tuesday. I think what we're going to do is share screen right away, and then I'll go through what we've been talking about. Okay. So go ahead. We're going to start with the Spanish slides. Okay. And hold on. I wasn't ready as I should be. Dang it. Okay. I need to make you go away. There we go. All right. So we have figured out all the technical difficulties. All right, everybody see my screen? Excellent. All right. So this is our last in a series. I do find it so interesting that this is the smaller turnout of all of them. Maybe we'll get more people as the evening goes on, but but like this is the one everybody should be at from the very beginning because you need to be prepared for things to go wrong because it is guaranteed something will go wrong with your staff at some point. We all do the best we can in hiring the best people we can, but sometimes people fake us out and they end up not being the best employee. Um, I can tell you, Tina will have many a story for you tonight. I have my own stories with my son. I consider myself a really good judge of character, and yet I have hired people, brought people into our home that have done bad things. So,
Change.
yeah. All right. So how have we started? So we started on January 13th where we talked about hiring staff. We had a lot of people come for that one because everybody wants to know how to hire staff. Apparently, they don't care as much about actually maintaining them and protecting yourself from the staff. But on the next week, we talked about onboarding staff and orienting them towards the kind of work they should be doing. Just on Tuesday of this week, we did a session on maintaining and managing your staff. And now we're going to be talking about safety, health, and when things go wrong. Um, you should know that all of these recordings of the previous sessions are going to be provided to the local volunteer advisory committee of East Los Angeles Regional Center. So we're not exactly sure where they'll put it up on their website, but it will be available very soon. We just have to edit all of the videos. All right, I'm going to the next page.
The difference between traditional and SDP. Employees understand they are working for the person served, not for an agency. Loyalty to the person served and not to other staff. Rely on IFs or staff manager. Self-advocacy and family advocacy. So
Go ahead and explain.
in the SDP or in traditional system, the employees are not working for the person served. They are working for the vendor. And it's a big shift when you're working for the person you serve as opposed to working for the agency. Um, because I can fire you. Like I can not just tell your boss that I want a different staff person. I can literally fire you. So you need to be loyal to the person served and not to other staff because you don't work for the other staff. You work for the person served. And you can't be ganging up on the person served with other staff or covering for each other because that's not how it works in the SDP. So in the SDP, I rely a lot on my IF and I rely a lot on my administrative assistant, who's also my staff manager. And you really have to be good at self advocacy, and your family needs to get good at family advocacy to make it work.
All right.
Do you have anything to add?
I do. So all of these things that you're seeing here, oh, actually the first two bullets that you see, that's the way it works in the traditional system. So when when you hire staff in the traditional system, now there are exceptions. There are some really great, wonderful agencies in the traditional system that make it very clear that the staff is working for the individual as opposed to for the organization or company. But there are, most of them do not say that. And so if a self-advocate or a family member says to a staff person in the traditional system, like, I don't want you coming in anymore, or I'm unhappy with the way you're working, often the answer is, well, I'll talk to my boss about it because their boss is not you. Their boss is their supervisor who works for an agency. And so you are powerless. You are powerless. I'll give you one example. When my son was young, he had some aggressive behavior, and we had an agency coming in to work with my son. And my son he was honestly, he was like 5 or 6 years old. He was a little kid, and he hit the staff person. And the staff person right in front of me smacked my son across the face and sent him flying through our living room. And I yelled at the staff member and I said, "Get the hell out of my house." And I immediately called the regional center and I said, "I never want this person in my house again. And I don't want to work with this agency anymore." And their response was, "Okay, well, we make sure to put something in the notes about this person not working for you." They did not say this person shouldn't work for anyone with a disability. They just said this person won't work for you, work with your child anymore. But we have a wait list and we're not sure, so you're going to have to continue working with this agency. And of course, I had to deal with this agency that would hire and maintain this staff member who was abusive to my son. So that's one story. Now let me tell you a story about the second bullet in the traditional system. There was a very famous story in the Los Angeles area, the San Fernando Valley, where a man with autism who did not speak was living in a home that his parents owned with 24/7 supports through a supported living agency. And the mom was very close with the son, and she would come over regularly to visit him. And she would find that the staff, and he had 2-on-1, by the way. So there were two staff working with him at all times. And she would walk in the door unannounced, which is exactly what you should be doing. And we talked about that, by the way, have these unannounced visits at the home. And and they always looked like they were in the middle of something, like they were covering up. And then she started noticing that her son had bruises, and she would ask them, "Where did he get these bruises?" And they would always have, "Oh, he fell," or da, da, you know, they would have all these kinds of excuses. So one day when the staff was out with her son, she brought in a company who put in hidden cameras all over the house. And within 24 hours, she had video evidence of her son being horribly physically abused by this staff. And when she went to speak to one of the staff, who was actually not the person committing the abuse, but was standing there and was as guilty and didn't stop this other person, he lied and covered up because this guy had no idea that they had video evidence. She then went to the supported living agency and said, "There is abuse happening in my son's household," and they would not do anything about it either. And so she gave the videotape to the media, and it was the top news story, and it was a huge thing. And so this is what we're facing in the traditional system. This is when people are asking me what's good about the SDP. Like, if anything, this is the most important thing, is that the people you hire work for you and not for some agency, and they don't cover up for each other. So I just wanted to give you those examples and hopefully you don't have to have hidden cameras in the SDP, although I know people who do. We have a camera in my son's home. It is not hidden, and all of the staff know it is there. Um, and we can, by the way, this camera is not only a camera, we can go live into it at any time and we can listen to what's happening. So even if it's not in the camera range, we can hear if my son is upset about something. So there are many different ways to protect yourself. Kaylee, can I just ask you real quick to check your phone? I just texted you something that I need. Thank you very much. All right, let's go on to the next slide, everybody. Okay, so cameras, I was just talking about it. I when I say you must tell staff, I don't actually know, so I'm not going to say whether you're required by law to tell the staff if there's hidden cameras. I don't actually know the law. So when I say must tell staff, I think for a matter of trust, you should tell the staff. Um, and so I don't know how many of you know about body cam. Um, so the body cameras are what, at least in Los Angeles, um, police officers and sheriff's officers are required to have body cams. And and so that means that we're able to go back and look at the video of um, of an incident, specifically when there's been a question about an officer involved shooting or whatever, and we're able to see actually what happened in real time. So um, the thing is that the cameras can be very, very useful. The one thing that I would recommend is that you don't keep cameras in private places. Like, let's say the staff has a room in your house where they sleep. Like, you should not be putting the camera in that room. You should not be putting, if there's a bathroom that they use, do not be putting the camera in there. We don't actually have a camera in my son's bathroom either because we just feel it's completely inappropriate. But you can sit and talk to your. I think that the person who's the participant needs to have a bit of agreement if you're going to be putting cameras in places that are private. Another way to ensure safety is to have regular check-ins that are scheduled so that you come over every Monday afternoon or that you come over every Wednesday and that the staff is ready for that and that it keeps them understanding that people are watching what they're doing. But in addition to that, you need to have unannounced drop-ins. So it's just, and I wouldn't be like, I'm dropping in to make sure you're not doing anything bad because that is not helpful because you want to have a level of trust with the staff. If you don't trust your staff, you should be firing them and hiring people that you do trust. But an unannounced drop-in, I tell you, we used various excuses like, oh, we just went to the grocery store and wanted to drop this off, or oh, I've had this thing in my car, I wanted to put it in here, whatever it is. Or I just miss my son and I'm showing up and I just felt a pang to come in. Like, don't tell them that you are doing this to check up on them, but I would say at least a couple of times a week, at least for the beginning of a new staff, when you're working with a new staff, you should have unannounced drop-ins. You can also, this is more about safety from people in the outside world as opposed to people who are on their staff, is that any place that an individual with disabilities lives without their family should have an alarm system. It could be something, honestly, it doesn't have to be like a fancy and expensive one. Ring cameras are now pretty dang cheap, and they have abilities to set up a pretty loud alarm if somebody's entering. Um, uh, Another issue with safety is to have a rule in the household with your staff that this no matter what dysregulation the participant is going through, they are never locked in their room. It is actually illegal to do that. It's called seclusion, and there is actually state law that that makes it illegal. Um, if a person is having a meltdown, if they're being aggressive, like you cannot throw them in a room and lock the door and lock them in the room. Like it is illegal to do that. Um, this is where if you're dealing with an individual who has a lot of behavioral challenges, you need to have a very, very clear behavioral plan and strategy, and that everybody is trained to be consistent in their reaction to any kinds of behaviors. I'm going to throw this one because Tina added this, which I love. Go ahead and Tina, you talk about this one.
Yeah, safety goes both ways. Your staff need to feel safe in their work environment as well.
And how would you make them feel safe?
Um, in lots of ways, like we we teach them how to turn off the water and the power so that if like an earthquake happens, they can do those things to keep us safe. Um, and we make sure that like the house isn't falling apart and there aren't dangerous things laying around. And
And
well, I
and
don't.
they should feel safe from sort of verbal abuse from anybody in the household.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you need to be nice to your staff if you want your staff to be nice to you. That's just part of being a human being. You need to be nice to each other. I try to make my staff happy. Like I try to I advocate as much for my staff as I do for myself. So
Exactly. I also want to talk a little bit about natural supports. So sometimes the regional centers use the term natural supports to a point where people resent the concept. But let me define to you what natural supports are. So natural supports are people who are in the lives of people with disabilities voluntarily and without pay. So it can't be used against you like, mom, dad, this is your responsibility. You should be doing this. And we're making you do it. That is not a natural support because if mom and dad don't want to do it, then that's not a natural support. But so my son moved into that old house where we used to live. So when my kids were young, we lived in a house, um, and then we moved to a new house, and then 2 years ago, my son moved back to our old house, where we know all of the neighbors. And so it just so happens that our next door neighbor has a child, an adult child with pretty significant developmental disabilities. Our neighbor across the street are two teachers, and they have a son with autism. We have an elderly person across the street who is home all the time and is very nosy and is constantly looking out the window. These are the best possible natural supports because some of them understand disability and the other ones are nosy. And you want people so sometimes I'll be at my son's house and I'll see the neighbors and I'll go talk to them and they'll be like, "Oh my God, I saw your son and he was out with the staff. The staff was so great with him." That makes me so happy. And I'll respond with, "Thank you so much for telling me that. And if you ever see anything that you have concerns about, call me immediately." And most staff don't realize that they were being watched all over the place, not just by mom and dad, but they were being watched by neighbors as well.
I think another way of keeping your staff safe is making sure they know all the rules are. Because you don't want to be constantly threatening your staff. Well, if you don't do this, I'm going to fire you. That doesn't make people feel safe
Mhm.
either.
Exactly. That's abusive, I think. You should
Yeah,
it makes no sense. It doesn't get them to trust you.
no.
All right, next slide. This is yours, Tina.
Oh, sorry. So, your health. You need to have protocols for medical emergency. You can't just expect that people will know what to do. You need to train them what to do. You need to write down what you expect them to do, emergency numbers, and all that stuff. You need to provide names of doctors and the nearest hospital. You need to have a protocol for medication distribution, so that it gets written down so the next staff shift knows that it got done. And they need to know what to do if the dosage is missed or if an overdose occurs. So like you need to have numbers for like poison control and things like that, and a place where everybody knows where they are.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Everything written down in a book that they can see or online where they can access it. Um, for us, we have had situations where my son takes medication in the morning and in the evening, and we've had situations where, people forget and it's just by accident, and we know it's not intentional. Um, the most important thing is that somebody told us, and so we can provide guidance on what to do. And you should, if you don't know what the protocol should be when a medication dosage is missed, you should be speaking to the doctor because the doctor will let you know. But there are specific drugs that are actually very problematic if it's missed. Things like anti-seizure drugs are very problematic when they're missed. And so it's really important that you know exactly what to do. It's like if it's missed up to X amount of hours, you can still give it to them. But if it's like more than a certain amount of hours, you just have skipped the dosage and you go back on the schedule, like whatever it is.
It's also really, really, really important to keep track of as need medications or PRNs because it's easy to forget whether you took it or not. Especially if you're in pain, you'd be like, you're hurting, so you take it, but then if you don't write down what time you took it, you won't know what time you're allowed to take it again. So my staff always write those things down.
Great,
You
great.
don't want to accidentally overdose because you took it again too soon.
Exactly. All right, next slide. Emergency preparedness. Um, the There are just standard things. First of all, if in every home you need to have a fire extinguisher. Like that's just the bottom line. And you should be checking, like this is a reminder to me that I should be checking to make sure it's still working at my son's house. But everybody should know the location of the extinguisher. Everybody should know the evacuation route if there is a natural disaster. Um, Everybody should have an earthquake plan. Uh, One of the big key things in earthquake preparation is that that everybody has the phone number of somebody who does not live in the area that would have experienced the earthquake. So that there's an emergency number out of state or if you're in Southern California, you should, have somebody in Northern California or because there should be a presumption that phone lines are going to be very hard to use if there's a major earthquake. And so if you can find a landline, usually those still work, and that you can call the person who's out of the area to tell them that you're safe, and then everybody else can be calling that same person. Um, and you also should know where to go. There are very clear recommendations for earthquake safety, like to go underneath a table so that if the ceiling caves in or things are falling off of walls, you're protected underneath the table. And I also recommend that you practice those procedures with the participant so that they're not hearing for the first time, get under the table and then refuse to do it. I can tell you of just like practicing these procedures is sometimes hard because an individual's never experienced an earthquake or a fire. Like they don't know what to do. But it is still worth practicing. There is this horribly tragic story from Northern California from several years ago of a house fire. It wasn't a major fire like happened in the LA area, but like a house fire, and everybody evacuated, but the young man with autism was so terrified they couldn't move him. And he and his mom kept dragging him, trying to drag him out, and she couldn't. and the mom and the son perished in the house fire. And I mean, it was horribly tragic. But that's the kind of thing where practicing helps people to know this is what could happen. Same thing with car accidents. Everybody should have the name of the insurance company. Everybody should know who do you call in case of a car accident, who can be available to get to the scene of the car accident immediately, who is local. Like you should have a list of people and like here's my top choice, they're not available. My second choice, they're not available. And then you have a third person that you can call. I mean, obviously, every staff member should have every other staff member's um, information, but you should also have emergency contacts for your staff. So let's say something happens, there's a car accident, and the staff member gets hurt. Um, you may not have any idea who their closest family members are or how to reach them. And so you should have emergency contacts for everyone. And then finally, a go bag. A go bag is for all for mostly for earthquakes, but you can also use them in with fires. It has in it sometimes, a canned food, a bottle of water, something like in our go bag, we have a crank radio so that it doesn't require electricity and you can crank it up and it has enough energy from the cranking. Band-aids, bandages, all those kinds of things can be in the go bag. You could even have medication in the go bag as long as you're regularly changing the medication so it doesn't expire. But
It's
these,
a good idea to have a list of phone numbers in the go bag as well, so that you have the participants' parents' numbers in there and things like that, because your phone might not be working.
it's
Sometimes the
absolutely
power goes down.
right.
So if you have those numbers, you might be able to use a landline somewhere else.
Right. I mean, it's a sad thing is it's harder and harder to find a landline nowadays
Yeah.
because there's no payphones anymore that you can run to. And, maybe stores have landlines, but a lot of like I could probably go to all my neighbors in my neighborhood and none of them would have a landline. All right. This is you, Tina.
Abuse prevention. Abuse prevention methods and the ability to say no. You need to teach people that it's okay to say no. The warning signs. Staff talking down to you or to your loved one is definitely abuse. Coercion is also abuse. Failing to support the decision making process, it's a warning sign. Changes in the person's behavior and the way they react to that individual, huge warning sign. And of course, missing possessions or money or bruises are all warning signs.
Well, I don't want to make you tell the whole story, but do you want to talk a little bit about the abuse that you have faced, Tina?
I'm sure I had a live-in caregiver. I don't recommend doing that because if you only have one or two caregivers as your entire circle of support, um, it's too easy for people not to know what's happening. They will isolate you so that you don't have other contacts, and that's not okay. Right now I have a large team, so that circles through, so it's not the same person here all the time. So it's less likely that abuse will occur. But when I had a live-in caregiver, um, like it just was really messed up because the law protected the caregiver, not me. And when I finally got brave to ask enough to ask for help, it was a problem because I had to let them live in my home for 60 days after I terminated them because they had lived in my home long enough for them to be protected in that way. So I had to find somewhere else to go, and they destroyed my home while I wasn't there. But they were abusing me financially before that. They were taking my money. They were not letting me choose how my money was spent. They were putting my things in storage because they wanted enough room for their things, and then they didn't pay the storage. So I lost everything that mattered to me. Like all of my family heirlooms are gone.
Hmm.
And They were saying things like I would say, I don't like you to talk to me like that. And they would say, well, I'm going to talk to you like a child because you're behaving like a child. No, I'm over the age of 18 and I have the right to be talked to like an adult. We have rights and people forget that. And some of our rights are very subtle. It's important that your staff respect you and talk to you appropriately because a lot of problems occur when people don't do that. Like a lot of behaviors are just an expression of the frustration inside you. So you have to look for changes. Like sometimes we don't say right away when something's wrong, but there will be signs. If we have withdrawn, something's wrong. If we're not talking like we used to, something's wrong.
Exactly. I can tell you that we had a caregiver for my son a number of years ago, in our own home. And you should know that I would come home from work and I'd throw my purse in the front, right near the front door. And then I would go, we had a home office, and I would sit in my home office. And I started noticing that I thought I was going crazy. Like, I swear I had money in my wallet. Like, where did I spend it? Or maybe it's like I thought I had $60, but now I have 40. Like, I don't remember spending the 20. And it was driving me crazy. And then all of a sudden, I came to the realization that the caregiver was stealing money out of my wallet. But I wasn't 100% sure because we loved this caregiver, and this caregiver was so amazing to our kids. And we set a trap for the caregiver. I came home, I threw my purse like it did, but I had written down, I had like a few ones, some fives, a 10, and a couple 20s, and I wrote down exactly how much money I had so I was going to remember it and not go crazy. And then I stayed in my office for like an hour or two. And then I came out while they were all watching TV in another room. And I grabbed my purse and I brought it out to my office. And I looked and money was gone. And waited till my husband got home from work. And we confronted her and fired her on the spot. But it's like you need to, these things happen, guys. And she was the best with my kids. She was so wonderful. But she had a boyfriend who was a drug addict and he was convincing her to steal money. It's like why we wouldn't notice it. And in fact, I didn't notice it for probably a month. So these things happen. Don't think that you're immune. Don't think you're immune. But overall, most people are really great. Most people, every other person we've had who worked with us was so, so great. And it's, we're so happy with how my son is doing and the staff that he has. And you have to learn from the mistakes that you make as well. Okay, this is you as well, Tina.
Common staff problems: not showing up for your shift, ghosting, sleeping on the job. If it's not something you're allowed to do, is a problem. If you're on your phone too much and the rules are not to be on your phone that much, it's a problem. Everybody's got house rules. If you're not following the house rules, that's a problem. Staff that quit suddenly or threaten to do so can be a form of abuse. If you walk off the job while you're on shift, that is called abandonment and it is illegal. You cannot do that, and you cannot threaten to do that in order to control the person's behavior. That will get you fired at my house immediately. Well, the next day, because it won't happen until it's safe for me to do that. But yeah, I've had to terminate someone because they threatened to leave at a time when I was unable to speak. I lose the ability to speak at certain times. When I get really frightened, or when I'm about to have a seizure, or I feel like I might have a seizure, it's very hard for me to talk. And getting angry at me makes that worse, not better. The only thing that makes that go away is me feeling safe. So threatening to leave because I'm not talking to you, when it's been explained to you from the beginning that that happens to me is not okay. So I had a caregiver who did that. Like I had literally already said to her, I can't talk about this right now. I'm getting too close to having a seizure. Can we talk about it later? And she wouldn't stop. And I lost the ability to speak. And she finally said, if you don't start talking to me, I'm going to leave. I immediately put a text message to my IF and I said, please call my phone and talk to the caregiver. I can't talk and she's threatening to leave. So he called my phone and I handed it to her and he dealt with it. And the next day we fired her
Hmm.
because it's not okay. It's not okay. You can't make me feel scared like that. That just makes my health worse.
Um, so, you know, all of these things on this list are things I have seen happen with people who've worked for us. Um, or people that we think are gonna like you hire someone and then the first day they're supposed to show up, they don't show up. That's called ghosting. And they don't answer your emails, your texts, your phone calls. Um, but not everything in here are grounds for firing. I'll give you an example. So, sleeping on the job. So, my son comes, we have a routine where he comes over to my house every Friday night for dinner. And his staff drops him off and picks him up, but doesn't stay for dinner. It's our family time. And there was a time when we were texting the staff to come pick up my son and take him home, and he didn't answer. And then we called, and he didn't answer the phone calls. So luckily, my son only lives a mile away. So I got in the car and I brought him home, and I started yelling when I walked in the door. And it turns out the staff had was taking a nap, which honestly, I have no problems taking a nap, but you better keep your phone on ringer and you better wake up when it rings. And we gave him a talking to and we said that's unacceptable. And he apologized profusely. It has never happened again, even though he continues to take naps on Friday nights. I don't care. He's not ignoring my son because my son is not with him. But he always has the phone on very high volume and he wakes up immediately. House rules, definitely, for sure. But being on the phone is actually probably the most common staff problem I've ever heard of. People complain all the time. This is much worse when you have like school aides, and the school aides are sitting on their phone in the classroom while the teacher is teaching. Like unacceptable. I used to see that all the time in special education classes. But it doesn't mean that you say you can never be on your phone. Of course, they can be on their phone as long as they're not driving, as long as they're not being responsible for a specific caregiving task. If my son loves to just hang out in the afternoons, he needs to decompress after his day. And my son is sitting playing videos on his phone. I don't care if his staff is on the phone as long as they're close by. And if he needs them, they are there right away. So, some of the stuff you can't be overly strict because then you're not going to retain your employees. But at the same time, they have to be available and responsible at all times when they're needed.
And one another common staff problem is the chores not getting done. Like we have a chore list at my house. There are certain things that are expected to be accomplished on every shift. And sometimes people get lazy and they don't check the chore list and they don't do the things they're supposed to. And we understand that happens sometimes. I mean, everybody has a day when they're off their game, but if it's a repeating common problem with one staff member, which I mean, we don't have this problem a whole lot, because we do talk about it enough and we do have things written down. But yeah, when it comes to a problem like that, we will talk to that staff person because the other staff that follow them shouldn't have to play catch up before their shift starts. I mean, things that are supposed to get done should get done
Yeah.
most of the time. I mean, there's always situations where things don't get done. If I've had a seizure and, there's a lot going on and I'm like, I don't want you cleaning my floor right now because I'm taking a nap, then, I mean, that's different. But most of the time it should get done.
Agree. All right, let's go to the next slide. I believe this is my slide. Yes. You need to hold staff accountable for when there are concerns. It's not as easy as you think it is because um, staff often become part of your family. They you I learned to love all of my son's staff, most of them over he's going to be 29 tomorrow. And I've learned to love most of the people who've ever worked for him. We have nannies who worked for him when he was 5 years old, and they are absolutely part of my family. They are now married with kids, and their kids call me Auntie Judy. Like that is actually a really great thing when you consider them part of your family. But when they're currently your employees, you have to maintain some level of professionalism because sometimes family likes to get away with stuff. And in fact, sometimes, by the way, some of the staff are actually your family. They are aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, brothers, sisters, and often moms and dads. And so it's hard to be your own supervisor. But you can't, let's say you hired sister or brother to be staff, and sister or brother have been flaking, like that's not acceptable. Like it's not an optional thing. They are getting paid to do this work, and they should be treated the same way that other staff. You should know, I have seen this backfire. I have seen a situation where there are professional staff who come in, but one of the staff is also brother. And brother sits on his butt and watches TV during his shifts or takes naps during his shifts. But the rest of the staff are required to be doing the harder work, the chores, the cleaning up. And guess what happens? The staff starts to resent this, and the staff quit because of this. And so you have to be really careful when you have real family who's part of your staff mixed in with professionals. It can become very complicated. You need to learn how to appropriately provide um, management over your staff and holding them accountable. Because you can't be a jerk about it. You have to do it. First of all, anything you do verbally should be followed up with something in writing. Like, um, you came in an hour late and it caused a lot of problems because you came in an hour late. This is a concern of mine. If this happens again, we're going to give you a warning. Like if and you put this in writing. And then if they do it a third time, you fire them. I mean, it's like people who are perpetually tardy and perpetually late for their shift. I mean that doesn't work for people. It doesn't work it's disrespectful to the staff who are supposed to be off duty. It's disrespectful to the person who's being supported.
It's important to establish ahead of time what the protocol is though. Because I have staff that are like 5 or 10 minutes late, and I don't really care about that. But if
Right.
you're a half an hour late, that's a problem because people want to go. And if you're a half an hour late, I start stressing that you're not coming at all. So my staff understand that I would like them to be on time. I will understand if they're 5 minutes late. I won't be happy if it's 10, but I'll understand. But more than a half an hour late, you better have called or texted, and it better not happen too many times.
And let me tell you, Tina's highly verbal and manages her staff. My son is not highly verbal and isn't really managing his staff, but do not think that he doesn't notice when somebody's 30 minutes late. My son can tell time. He has a watch. My son obsessively looks at the schedule of his staff. And if he thinks that Michael's coming in at 9, Michael better be in at 9. And by 9:15, he is starting to stress out. And by 9:30, he's going to start having behaviors. So don't think that just because the person may not be Tina, they still are noticing this stuff. They are right on. My son is so on top of staffing. He's more on top of it than I am for sure. Um, other things are training. Like training helps people, giving them professional training. There was a time, it's gone now, but there was a time when just direct support professionals could take a video class or a couple of video classes that DDS was offering and earn $1,500 in bonuses. You know darn well that I told all of my son's staff about this. This was in 2024. And all of them took the class, all of them got the bonus. And then when we had our next circle meeting, I asked them what they thought of the class. They all loved it. Like I thought they were just doing it to get the $1,500, but they loved it. They said they learned so much about being a good professional, direct support professional. So, unfortunately, right now, funding wise, there's not a lot of money out there to offer them to do these trainings, but it still is a very good thing to say, yeah, there's this 1 hour class. You can clock in for this 1 hour to take this one class because I think it's a really good idea for you to gain these skills.
Yeah, I think those classes are actually still available,
Mm.
but they don't pay you for doing them anymore. And I
Oh.
warned my staff that that was the case. I was like, okay, for a limited time, you take these classes and they'll pay you for it. Eventually, they'll stop happening.
Mm.
But I'm glad they still like have the class available because I noticed a real difference in the way that my staff treated me after they took the classes. So
That's
I
great.
now teach them more about supported decision making and things like that when they first start because people just don't know all that stuff.
Mhm. Of course not. Remember that you can hire a staff manager to deal with scheduling, supervising staff, dealing with call offs. We've talked about that at a previous session, but sometimes having that staff manager is very helpful because, um, as a person as a participant, it's like sometimes hard for the participant to make like difficult choices and to say, I want to have this good relationship with my staff member, but I'm unhappy with the fact that they're coming in late. So somebody else is going to talk to them about coming in late, then that and that's different than the participant. That is very helpful. I can tell you we have a staff manager so that we don't have to be the one who talks to the staff, but there has been a situation where the staff manager talked to them and my husband and I talked to them too because it was serious enough where we had to, really make it clear that we can never see this again. Also make sure you have policies about calling off. Like if, we need you to tell us 2 hours before your shift begins if you're sick. I mean, obviously that can't always happen. Or maybe 2 weeks before you take time off. Um, that to me is reasonable. Most people don't spontaneously go, I'm going to Mexico for a week. Like they usually have a plan and have a plane ticket or something like that. All right, next slide. This is you, Tina.
Yeah, sorry, I was answering somebody in the chat. Um, what staff are mandated reporters? What is a mandated reporter? All service providers funded by regional centers are mandated reporters. SDP service providers, independent facilitators, FMSs, people who work for your vendors, they're all mandated reporters. They are legally required to report suspected abuse, neglect, abandonment, isolation, financial, or exploitation of people with IDD. They must follow a zero tolerance policy. You have to keep us safe.
And so a lot of people don't know this. A lot of staff do not know that they're mandated reporters. And that includes family members are mandated reporters if you're paid through the SDP. And that means you cannot, it is illegal for you to cover up. If you know, so you should remember I told you that story because this is also in the traditional system. Like it's all service providers in the traditional system are also mandated reporters. And I told you that story about the abuse in the San Fernando Valley um where the one guy watched the abuse happen but never reported it. He was also prosecuted for abuse. And because he did not meet the law about mandated reporting. And that, by the way, not reporting, you could be fined up to $1,000, and you could have you potentially could go to jail for it. So you need to take these things very, very seriously. We
IHSS workers, although they're not part of the regional center, are also mandated reporters. Not everybody knows that.
Right. I realize I got ahead of myself because, yes, we talk about the failure to report is punishable by up to 6 months in jail or up to a $1,000 fine. Here's the steps of what your staff have to do to if they suspect or are actually witnesses to abuse.
Or if you even just tell them.
Yeah, this is very specific in state law that immediately, like within the hour, they must call the police. They must report this to the police or to Adult Protective Services or to Child Protective Services. They must do this or else they're breaking the law. Within 2 days, they must complete what's called a special incident report, which, by the way, you can make it, it can just be a blank email, but if you want to get a very specific form on it, every regional center has it. Every FMS also has these forms, and it must be provided to the regional center. Now, not every staff knows how to report things to the regional center, but they all know how to report things to an FMS because they all are getting paid from an FMS. And so they can just send it to the FMS and say, I don't know what else to do. I'm contacting you. And you should know that it is required by the employers to train the employees about these mandated reporter laws. And you're supposed to really do this training once a year to remind everybody of it.
We're about to redo mine here coming up.
This is mine. So this is what do you do when you think staff are covering up for each other? Um, just I would make sure you have alone time with staff. Like if you are showing up at a house and it's a 2-on-1 for an individual and they are always together, that is not going to work for you. You need to whether you call separately or when you ask one of the staff to step outside and have a private conversation with them, you need to make sure they understand that they are accountable to you, to the individual served, and not to each other. Um, and you should make it very clear to them that if they cover up for one another, they are subject to termination. Like that is the bottom line. Next slide.
Firing staff. When training does not fix the problem, when warnings go unheeded, sometimes you need to let your staff go. There is a termination process. You need to notify your FMS immediately because the FMS has to send a paycheck the same day. You must have staff ready to take open shifts. You don't want to fire someone and have no one to cover their shifts. And don't forget the same rules apply when an employee quits. You still need to do the exact same steps.
You should know that if you do not notify your FMS immediately and that or if you notify them and they don't pay the staff you're terminating within 24 hours, there are penalties and fines. And so this is state law and it's really, really important that you follow that law. If you get nothing else out of today, know that by the way, it's not just when they're terminated. If somebody quits, they are also required to have their last paycheck within 24 hours. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. I have been unable, because I was sharing screen, been unable to look at the chat to see if there were questions. But folks can ask, there are actually very few questions I'm seeing in the chat.
And there
Um,
are no hands raised.
And there are no hands raised. If any of you have any questions about this session or sessions that we've had previously, feel free to raise your hand or put your questions in the chat. I know Michael asked if we have information on that course, and you should see that Tina put it in the chat right there, so you can see that's a course that you won't get paid to do anymore, but at least you get to um, at least you can encourage your staff to take it. So any questions out there, anybody? I did we explain everything so perfectly that nobody has any
You
questions?
did a super good job, apparently.
I guess we
Okay,
did.
there's somebody in the chat now.
Okay. I believe that if an employee quits with no notice, then you have 72 hours to pay them. But if you fire them or they provide notice, then you have to pay them immediately on their last day. I'm going to answer like, I don't know. I've only been told, like, you may very well be right, and I can do a little Google search on that. But what I have been told from FMSs that you have to, inform them so they can get their final paycheck within 24 hours. Um, here's what I can say is that, so this is not in the context of the self-determination program, but at DVU, we've had people quit suddenly, and we did make sure they got their paycheck within 24 hours. So I don't know if we just did it quickly or if we didn't know that we had 72 hours. I'm not sure, but that we can try to find out because that's like important to know.
It is business days. So, like, I think if you terminate someone over the weekend, they'll pay them on Monday
Yeah,
because,
or on a Friday, they have until Monday to pay them.
yeah.
I think there's a
But
hand
you
up.
have a hand.
Yeah.
It disappeared. There we go.
I'm
F
here.
Fatima.
It's Fatima. Um,
Okay.
I wanted to ask regarding the because I think I want to be an IF, and I know I talked about it before, and I went down the rabbit hole. So I wanted to let you know that at the end of one rabbit hole, I found a picture of Tina.
Hmm.
And I was like, I know her. So I wanted to know if I can receive information regarding maybe training about IF or someone that can guide me if you guys know. I think I would like to do that for the clients that I've previously worked for regional center for 10 years, and I was a social worker for a while. So I want to do the training so I can help others. If you guys have any information, I'd greatly appreciate it. I know I said it a couple of weeks ago, and I'm saying it again because I think that that's really where my heart is. Thank you.
That's so wonderful.
Sometimes LVACs offer training.
There are so local volunteer advisory committees are at every regional center. If you're at East Los Angeles Regional Center, their local volunteer advisory committee um, is the group that hired us to do this training, and they often give grants to organizations or companies to do free independent facilitator training. So I know that like Autism Society of LA has done it, had a grant. I know Guidelight Group has had a grant, and a few others. So yeah, they exist. I want to go back to the fact that Michael is correct. I did a quick labor code check, and he is absolutely correct. If somebody provides less than 72 hours notice of quitting, you have 72 hours to pay them. So even if they just give 48 hours notice, you still have the 72 hours to get them their paycheck. So thank you for clarifying that. And Kaylee, let's note to clarify that the next time we give this. Thank you, Michael. That was super helpful. Appreciate that.
Also, it's good to note when I terminate someone, unless I don't feel safe, I usually give them 2 weeks notice, and we ask that they do the same for us because it does take time to find another staff person.
Absolutely.
All right, we have hands raised. Can I call the next one?
Yep.
Tiffany? It's not letting me. Oh, it goes.
There you go. Yeah, you could unmute. Oops. Unmute her again, please. There we go.
Yes, hi. I have a question. This meeting has been recorded. Is there any way we can get like a link or something that we can review? It's just a lot of information every
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
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 So we're going to give all of the recordings to East Los Angeles Regional Center. I'm not exactly sure where they're going to put it on their website. It might be on the self-determination page. But definitely check back. Are you a client of East Los Angeles Regional Center?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you'll be able to go onto their website and see all the recordings from all four of our sessions.
Okay. Thank you. Mhm.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Jason Yang.
Hi, Judy. Hi, Tina. I have
Hi.
a question. In your last session, you mentioned we can use home insurance to cover liability. Could you clarify that? What exactly cover liability? What do you mean by liability? What is covers?
Yeah. So let me distinguish between the different kinds of insurance. So there's workers' compensation insurance, which is when a worker gets injured during the course of their job. So it's not like they get injured skiing over the weekend, but if they, let's say, they're caring for an individual who uses a wheelchair and you had to pick them up from their wheelchair and put them into bed and you injure your back. Like that is a workers' compensation claim. And almost all of the um, FMSs provide workers' compensation to their clients through the employer burden rate. Liability insurance is often what the FMSs have their own liability insurance. They're not necessarily covering you as parents, but liability insurance is for different kinds of issues. For example, if an employee believes that they've been discriminated against and they sue their employer for discrimination, like let's say they feel that there's racism involved, or they feel like they've been treated, maybe there's that you say, I'm sorry, you can't work for us anymore because you're too old. Like that is actual age discrimination, and they can sue you as the employer for doing that. So liability insurance covers those kinds of things. The best thing to do is to not do any of those, not, not, not discriminate against anybody. But, there are times that people perceive discrimination and maybe there isn't any. So that liability insurance often lies within your homeowner's insurance policy. I was mentioning yesterday at a training that I was sued for defamation of character by a regional center executive director who had got fired for some actions that he took, and that I made public, and he sued me for defamation for $1 million. And the and my homeowner's insurance hired the lawyers and paid to defend me in the court case that I eventually won. So that's what that kind of insurance does. For folks who don't own their own home, and you have people coming in and out of your home to support you, you better get renter's insurance because things can happen in your home that you want to protect yourself. So that's what I mean by liability insurance, Jason.
Do you think when we need insurance to cover ourselves, but when we use the insurance, there also a consequence using insurance or rate will go up? Does it affect our rate like auto insurance? If we have accident, the auto insurance might go up. Do you think we use home insurance in the similar consequence?
Yeah, theoretically, if you win the case, because so they're paying
Uh-huh.
for the lawyer. So in my
Okay.
case, we won the case, and the former executive director had to pay my legal fees. Theoretically, our insurance shouldn't have gone up. Although I have some vague recollection that they tried to do that and I was pissed about it. But if you win the case, it shouldn't go up. But if you lose your case, yeah, your homeowner's insurance might go up. It's just the same thing like if you have, a giant flood in your house and you use your homeowner's insurance to pay for repairs, your homeowner's insurance is going to go up. Once you start using that money, your insurance rates will go up. But you should know, here's the deal, is that if right now, if the participant is an adult, 18 years or older, they are the employer of record. In the vast majority of cases, people with disabilities do not have a lot of money. They are not rich. They don't have a lot of money in their bank account. And so there's really no interest in for anybody to be suing the person with a disability. Um, if right now there are some FMSs who will not allow the child, a minor child, to be the employer of record, and this is in the sole employer model. Where the employer of record is the participant or their family member. So there are some cases in which parents are the employer of record in the sole employer model. In the co-employer model, it's the FMS that's the employer of record, and therefore the FMS is held liable for any of any discrimination or any of these kinds of things. So even if the parent is the one that does the discrimination, still the lawsuit would be against the FMS. So if you have somebody who's under the age of 18, you want to make sure that you have the liability insurance within your homeowner's insurance. But if there's an adult, like honestly, the risks are super low, almost nil, that they're I'm going to tell you that in Michigan, the state of Michigan, they have had the self-determination program for like 30 years and never once, and both children and adults are the employers of record. And I asked them recently, not once has anybody ever been sued by an employee through the self-determination program. Never once has the participant or their family member been sued.
In the new
So
year,
it just doesn't happen. So there are people out
uh,
there who are scaring you around this. It just doesn't happen in the real world.
I've never had liability insurance, and it's never been a problem.
Yeah.
I have a vendor. I passed the ABC test. They are contractor. They're doing something out of my control. They do something not SDP program, like the
Mhm.
art teacher. They
Right.
take my son to the park to draw pictures. They go to the
Perfect.
community. I have never asked them whether they have insurance. What's the conversation to ask them insurance? Most of them are small business, just one person business. They go out to teach people art. So how can I ask them, do you have insurance? What's the best way to ask them check their insurance? They have appropriate insurance.
I mean, it all depends on where you think the risk factors are. Like an art teacher who teaches in the park, I'm going to say that's a pretty low risk issue right
Uh-huh.
there.
Uh-huh.
But if let's say somebody's teaching your child gymnastics, where your
Uh-huh.
child could potentially get physically hurt, like
Uh-huh.
you want to be asking, you have liability insurance, right? Like most people who are vendors who are in more risky types of service provide provision, they are going to have liability insurance. But like somebody who comes in and teaches you piano, like I'm going to say there's virtually no risk at all.
My concerns, they go to the community. So the
Mhm.
transportation in case of traffic accident.
So this art
Go ahead.
teacher is driving your child into the
Yeah.
community?
Yeah.
Oh, they should not be doing that.
Okay.
That's a big no-no. You should not be having a vendor with a business license driving your child unless it is written into the contract you have with them. So, yeah, I wouldn't be doing that. I would have like, let's go to the park and I'll drop off my child at the park and then I'll pick them up later and you meet them in the park. Like,
If we have agreement, in the new year, I'm going to write the vendor agreement, employee agreement. I'm going to write their job duty and write down the rules. I learned a lot of rules from you.
mhm,
And, if you are late, t give us, 10 minutes notice. Uh,
mhm.
if you, so I'm going to write this thing. Can I said you provide transportation. When you provide transportation, your insurance will cover
Right.
Christopher.
And FMSs are pretty strict about that stuff. Um,
Uh-huh.
in fact, I know of some FMSs that would absolutely prohibit this person from driving without
Okay.
getting their driving record and a proof that they have insurance.
Okay, okay. If they can provide a driving record and insurance, they can allow that happen.
Right. I'm going to say that that person actually doesn't pass the ABC test if they're driving your child. If
Okay,
if they're working at some art studio and you drop off your child at the art studio, that passes the ABC test. But the fact that they're driving your child, they to me are staff.
Yeah,
okay,
I have an art teacher. They never drive me anywhere. They come to my house
okay,
or they meet with me online. They do both of those things, but they never
okay,
transport me. In fact, I have another staff who's the actual my actual like regular staff on shift at the same time when they come because caregiving isn't their job.
Mhm.
okay, okay, okay. They have their own business. They have a business license. Well,
Yeah,
I
but they shouldn't be driving people because that's not
okay,
part of it. Because I can promise you, when they got their business license, they did not put on it that we drive people. They put on
okay,
it that their order of business is teaching people art.
okay,
So yeah,
okay,
I would have some concerns about that, and I would just
okay.
stop having them drive your child.
Okay, okay. I think that's a great idea. I think SDP, everybody know SDP. When it comes to the detail, we confused about the details, the
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of
implementation.
details.
I'm going back into the chat right now, and Michael asked if you mentioned using an employment agency or staff manager to manage the employees. What service code would you utilize for that? It's the same service code as the staffing is 320. That's, by the way, not your job to know what the service code is. It is the regional center's job. So I hate talking about service codes. It's actually the only service code I know is 320. I never care about any other service codes. I say to the regional center, it's your, you know why there are service codes, everybody? It's to get federal funding. It's the only reason why there are service codes. And so we shouldn't have to be like at all worried about that stuff. I know that I get arguments from independent facilitators all the time. We, of course, we should know it. No, it's not your job either. It is the job of the regional center. I dare you to recite to me all the service codes in the traditional system, but when you were in the traditional system, you didn't know them because it wasn't your job to know them. It was a service provider's job, and it was the regional center's job. Um, okay, so let me for that service code, do you need to list it as a specific goal on the IPP, or does it go to the overall access to the services you are already authorized for? You should, if the staff manager is making more than their regular wage, which they absolutely should be for their management role, then you need to list it as a separate sort of line item. So for example, the staff manager for my son is also provides direct support. So he's in there under direct support, but then he works 4 hours a week as a staff manager at a higher rate. And that is a totally separate line item, still under the same service code.
And when I asked for that kind of assistance, when I had a live-in caregiver, I didn't need that kind of assistance because there wasn't so much to figure out. But when I started doing uh caregivers that came in every 8 hours, it was too much. Like it was overwhelming to me, and sometimes I was finding that I was being left alone because I didn't have the skills to do it right. So I actually asked the regional center for help, and they increased my budget to make it possible for me to have one of my caregivers become my administrative assistant for enough hours to make it work. I had an administrative assistant already to help me with all the paperwork involved, but they weren't assisting me with my staffing schedule and stuff. They weren't the like lead caregiver sort of thing. Um, so they actually increased my budget so I could do that. So it definitely needs to be an IPP goal.
I do not see any other questions in the chat. Are there any other questions for people to raise their hands?
Jason Yang raised his hand again. It's not working.
Yeah,
Sometimes when I
actually
hit it,
have Kaylee do it. So
Okay. I mean, do you have any referral for fiduciary services? I mean, the special need. I'm in the process writing a special need trust. I need the fiduciary services. Do you have any referral?
I do not. I don't make referrals for anybody at any time for any
Okay.
service,
Okay.
but because I cannot look like I'm endorsing anybody. Um, I I don't know. Are you thinking of having that paid for by the self-determination budget?
Oh, this is can be paid by
Oh,
self-determination.
no, that's okay. No, it can't. It generally cannot. I have heard over time somebody slipping through the cracks and getting it paid for through
Okay.
the budget, but it is pretty rare that I've ever seen that happen. So no, I don't. I can tell you this, that we have had a special needs trust for my son for many, many years. We have had three different lawyers draft it, and they all sucked. Every single one of them were terrible. They made all kinds of mistakes, and we've had to redo it and pay thousands of dollars to redo it. So I would recommend that you get lots of recommendations. And if you start hearing the same name over and over again from other people who said, yeah, this guy was great, they didn't make any mistakes, that is the person you choose. But I couldn't even recommend the people we used because they were horrible. My husband is a lawyer. He's not a probate lawyer. He doesn't write special needs trusts, but he's smart enough to read the document to realize that they did it wrong. And so most people are not. So they may think they have a great lawyer, but because they can't actually read the document in a way that helps them understand whether it's done correctly. I know I wouldn't have been able to figure that out. So you want to make sure that the one thing um, that I would make absolutely sure of is that, there are different kinds of special needs trusts. There's something called a first person trust and also a third person trust. And you make sure that the lawyer you pick knows the difference. Because when the individual has the trust becomes an adult, it sometimes becomes harder to get like on public benefits like SSI. And so you want to make sure the reason we found out that our special needs trust was done wrong the second time was because my son turned 18 and was getting on SSI and the um and the Social Security Administration rejected him for SSI because of his special needs trust. And it wasn't because he has a special needs trust, but because there is supposed to be this one provision in the trust, and I don't even remember exactly what it's supposed to say, but there's this thing that must be in there in order for people to retain their benefits, and they did not put in that one paragraph that was critical. So make sure you find somebody good.
and expect it to cost
So
a lot of money.
it's a challenge to create a trust that somebody ran the SDP program. SDP is more like a full-time job to me,
Yeah.
day and night. I think when parent passed away, it's hard to find a person. I think you said something that resonated with me. You must train your staff so that they can take care of your son as you do to them. I think it's a difficult, it's challenge, but it's a good direction to move to.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So remember that the person who draws up a special needs trust is not a professional fiduciary, they're a lawyer. Lawyers are the ones who draw up special needs trusts. Fiduciaries are the one who they manage trusts. So make sure you're looking for a lawyer, and they cost anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. They are very expensive. I can also, this one I can recommend because they are a nonprofit and I'm a big believer in them. There's something called the JLA Pooled Trust. And they are, if you just search JLA Pooled Trust, if you Google them, what you do is you invest your money into their trust. They charge you a monthly fee for it. But for that monthly fee, they manage the trust. They actually have a lawyer who draws up all the papers. They manage the trust for you, and they provide social workers for who are above and beyond your service coordinators or IHSS social worker or anything like that who help the individual. It's particularly, they are right. We don't have an account with them, but we are going to as we get older because they are a great group to have. Oh, thank you for finding them, Kaylee. They are a great group to have and to work with when we get older and maybe are not going to be able to stay on top of all things related to the trust. It's called a pooled trust because it's a lot of different people who pool their money together. That money is still your own. It still belongs to you, but it is part of a larger group so that all of you are able to benefit from the services they provide. And they're based in Los Angeles, although I think they can have clients from anywhere in California, possibly the country. I'm not even sure, but they're so phenomenal. It's run by a friend of mine named Michelle Wolf, whom I've known since I was 15 years old. And it is a total coincidence that we both had children with disabilities, and she's amazing. So I can actually recommend them.
You might also check with the ACLU. They have lawyers that help with a lot of things.
Not trusts, though.
Not trusts,
It's just getting people out of conservatorships.
but they might be able to refer you to someone who does. And well, they do help with supported decision making.
Right. But trusts are monetary, they're financial, and I know they wouldn't do that.
They might be able to refer you to somebody
Right.
if you find that the JLA trust doesn't work for you.
Right. Elvia writes, can you please point out what to look for, key factors when getting a special needs living trust? Will you do in the future a training workshop about the difference between special needs living trusts as a minor and changes when they become an adult? This would be so beneficial to us. We're not going to do it, but JLA Trust has these free sessions all the time. You do not have to be a member of their group. I think they must have programs a couple of times a month, and they also show you how to keep your public benefits. They're amazing. So I would just suggest going to their website and ask and going to one of their free programs. They have them all the time. And they're the only ones I know. Yeah, can you put that link once more in the chat, Kaylee?
Yeah, and then if you go to the bottom of this page that I just put in the chat, it has the recordings of other ones. So it might be one they already did, so you can watch it right away.
We've had them and continue to have them as guest speakers at our events, but you might as well go straight to the source and listen to them. And it's in real time, so you can ask them questions and follow up questions and get advice. They're just fantastic. All right, everybody. I'm not seeing any other questions. If there's nothing else, we're going to give you 6 minutes back in your lives. I'm excited to get the 6 minutes because I have more than 6 minutes worth of work to do this evening. So thank you all. We have so enjoyed putting together this training. As I mentioned earlier, this is you guys are our guinea pigs. Like, we have been thinking about doing this training for a long time, and it has taken a huge amount of work for Kaylee and Tina and I to make this happen. We're hoping to give this training again for another regional center, and are going to take all the feedback and ideas you gave us to improve it again. So thank you all so much, and please show up. Here's something you can do that we would appreciate is if you go to the next local volunteer advisory committee meeting of the East Los Angeles Regional Center, and during the public comment period, say if you liked our training. It would be great. Not that we're going to do it again for them or we're asking for anything, but it would be really helpful for them to understand that they invested a little bit of money in us that was worthwhile for folks. So hopefully you can do that and we appreciate it.
Oh,
It's
and
good to be active in your LVAC too.
Yeah.
It's just good. It's good to do.
And just to let them know, their next meeting is February 17th. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. And you can find on their calendar that I just put in the chat. That's where they keep the link. It changes every month. So check their calendar.
Right. And the recordings of these presentations will be somewhere on the East Los Angeles Regional Center website. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Stay safe out there. Take care, everybody.